Hey, it's Mike with Three Sons Guitars and the Great Guitar Build Off 2021. The video you see right now, I'm just going through with my really sketchy bandsaw scarf joint jig. It's one of the things I show on my quick shop tour, and I mentioned it's something that needs to be redone. This was kind of a makeshift solution, and you can see there I'm a little not too pleased with the results. It does get the job done, but there's a lot of post cleanup. And there'll always be some cleanup with the bandsaw, just the nature of that form of sawing. Um, and neck blank is typically just too wide to get on your standard 10-inch table saw in one pass to maintain that angle. And I don't think anyone wants to be in the business of flipping a workpiece over for a cut like this. So really simple jig, and we'll go from there to maybe a little bit of cleaning it up. And as you see here, you'll see me kind of struggling through to clean up the one face and get it ready for gluing. I didn't get great video on the glue up of the actual neck, but what I do like to do is drill some very small registration pins through the wings of the neck that I'll be cutting off, and then I'll clamp that down with those pins for registration and get a good solid joint. And I mentioned before, this is flame myrtle, switch from the mahogany I showed in the previous video. And you can see here I'm taking a large file, just kind of getting some of the really high spots off of that, those saw marks from the bandsaw. And, and I'll attack this with a number of things. I have a big flat piece of maple that I like to use with sandpaper. Sometimes I'll try my hand with one of my planes. Every piece of wood, every species, a little bit different. Doesn't make for too great a video, such a small surface area, but for the most part for this joint, it was really just sanding it flat and getting that all glued up. And what you're seeing here is another one of my homemade fixtures for slotting fretboards. I'm doing the super glue and masking tape trick to have my StewMac fret template affixed to the fretboard, and simple as having a nail set in the fence for this crosscut sled and running it through the paces. You'll notice when you make one of these sleds, I definitely have a double layer on the actual registration side to keep that straight and true, so nothing goes wonky as you're pressing against it and pushing that registration pin in. This is another fixture that, now that I've experimented making it, I would like to make one that's a little more refined in a sense, and maybe more adjustable as far as where my pin locations are, or possibly even like an index key. So with dark colored woods like ebony or this wenge, you can draw your center lines on, but it kind of stinks. So my next step is to mark my center line, mark out my nut width, mark out my width at the 12th fret based on my drawing, and then establish that tapered edge, and then cut that flush and get the fretboard its final shape on the bottom. Once I have that established, then I can transfer it to the neck blank with some locating pins, which are just a couple brad nails. And then once the size fretboard is glued on, then I can flush trim the neck to the fretboard, resulting in a finished shape, and then we can move that on to the body. I'm still waiting for my truss rod in the mail, and I still have this work to do now. So one of the tricks I learned from Ian Schechter, or Spector, however I say his name, over at Specimen Guitars, was to grab a little bit of this tempera paint and use that to kind of dry brush that on the guitar or on the fretboard. And if you do a good job at it, then all you got to do is let it dry, and it'll allow you to see your lines a little better. So the one thing with this, you can do it before you slot the guitar, and then you won't get anything in the fret slots. But in this case, I'm just going to go in between the frets. It doesn't have to be a perfect coverage, just enough to give you a frame of reference. And you're going to sand down quite a bit. And as long as you don't get glops of it, you know, you're in a good spot. So if you get the glops away before you hit the fret slot, then you're good. But you can see I'm barely using any of the paint. And not a needed step. You could do this with just a pencil, but I take the advice when I pay to learn it, and that was some good advice. I won't say I've done it on every fretboard. The last bass that I did, I was able to see everything on there, and I actually did a template for the bass, figuring that I may want to make more than one of that model. So I went through the effort to make MDF templates. And really, I only have to do this painting on the frets that I'm going to reference, but for video's sake, maybe letting everyone see the line on camera will be a good thing. The other risk you run doing this is an open or a deep grain, and I'm just thinking of this now with this Wenge, is really having a pain in the neck sanding all of this out. But I'm sure I'll be rubbing this down with things like mineral spirits and stuff, or denatured alcohol a number of times throughout the build, so I should be able to get all this paint off without too much ado. So now it's, and this stuff, I mean, it's almost dry already. And you can see the dust from the Wenge is already darkening this paint down, so kind of fun. And that's it. So just let that dry. We can draw our pencil lines on. Cut this last little section off, and you want to cut this off before you start, so you've got a solid piece for any repairs you need to make or other little inlays or veneers you want to use that for. Clean off our brush. And that's what I do to prep my fretboards. Another thing you're going to need a lot doing fretboard work is a center finding ruler. Obviously inches and in metric is the best. In this case, I'm 43 millimeters wide or so at the nut, and but for now I'm just trying to actually mark my center on the 12th fret. So I'll have my nut and my 12th fret, and I'll be able to draw that center line and draw my tapered edges here. I need to reestablish that line now that the paint's on there. And this is pretty important to take your time with. You don't want to mess this up. And we get our straight edge on there, ruler. center line. Hard to see on camera, but we'll go. And then we'll mark our nut and our 12th fret. And from this point forward, we're going to just make the lines, again, going from the nut all the way down to the 12th fret mark. Then once I've drawn those lines in, it allows me to get the final fretboard extension, if you want to call it, shape, and allows me to cut all that out prior. So this video has kind of been a long format one, and I'm new at doing the videos. So obviously camera angles and my audio recording isn't top notch, and I know you heard some mouse clicking during my video editing just based on the setup I have right now with a portable laptop doing work while I'm out of the house. But this is try to keep the format similar to this, but try to consolidate a little faster, maybe speed up some of the video. But in the next video, you'll see me looking at the neck pocket and my fixture that I've created to route my neck pockets, and then some freehand routing to open up the cavity to make this a semi-hollow instrument. So that's all I have for this video. I'll let this quietly run out, and thanks for watching. And um, obviously, if you're watching this, you've probably subscribed to the Great Guitar Build-Off playlist, but I'd love you to come back, so click subscribe here, and look forward to seeing what everyone else is building.